not your tests. Through this talk, we're going to talk about how to make better experiences through development and also through planning and execution. So my name is Ted Amira. I'm a project manager and user experience designer at Intridia. I'm on Twitter at TAmira. My talk is probably going to be the least technical talk that you guys have seen in this conference. We're going to cover more cognitive psychology and human factors stuff, and more or less talking about how you can best build an application that work well with your users and can work towards that. So I work for Intridia. We're a consultancy, and a lot of times what we do is we take clients with these ideas and like greenfield applications and kind of flesh them out. So what I'll be talking about might not be, you know, if you're a product company, it might not be exactly what you're, you know, how you're structured. But everybody loves tests, and we do too. But sometimes tests don't work. I mean, they do work, but they don't bridge all the gaps. You know, you've seen this with your test coverage and your test suite. Sometimes it's too much, sometimes it's too little. And for requirements, no one reads this crap. That little girl right there, she's like an old soul. You can see it in her face. So what I'm proposing is that all requirements documents should be visual. We as humans, we look for visual patterns. Even if you're a developer and you're in code all day, you're not really reading as much as you are looking for patterns and creating patterns. So bad planning equals bad tests, which then infers bad UX. And when I say UX, I'm meaning user experience. And then, so bad tests equal bad execution, which equals bad UX. So what might be bad user experience? I mean, we've all seen different sites, and you know, we can question whether or not they're valid, and many sites have been done about you know, this idea of user experience really driving home whether or not you can trust your site, the design of the site itself, and building this you know, user acquisition. So bad UX. This was bad UX. And what you can tell by this is that, so when people were building out MySpace, I mean, there was an article in UX Magazine, I guess it was maybe last year, about the downfall of MySpace. And what it really was is that it had really horrible user experience. But this user experience, it sort of accumulated like you accumulate code debt. It doesn't just, you know, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. What happened though is that requirements were not obvious here. When they were going through the agile process, never once did they think about, you know, whether they should cut off a feature or how a feature should work. There wasn't a line drawn in the sand. So what I'm, you know, and this might seem, I'll go through this this flow, but what I'm proposing is that we have really two sections. There's a planning section and an execution section. And you know, what tends to happen a lot of times is that developers and designers, you know, the two different camps, and everybody talks about that, how the communication can improve between the two parties. But what I'm saying is that there should be more of this overlap. So in the planning stage, what you would do is you go through these things, and I'll go through these in more detail in later slides, but you go through user flows, building out wireframes, which will be the visual requirements document, putting a polish and a sheen over the top of those wireframes to come up with the UI design. And then these are the two core pieces, and that would be creating user stories and writing tests, and that's where really the Venn diagram kind of overlaps, and you can communicate ideas between your entire team. So then writing tests, writing code, and another really important part which I'll talk on is reviewing UI. I'm not really going to be talking too much about the writing code and writing test part. We'll go over that like really briefly for writing tests, but really about the things in yellow and reviewing UI. So even in Agile, you need to have a plan. You need to have some sort of iteration plan, and this is whether or not you're a project that's starting out or you've been doing this for 5 years. So part of the planning stage, like I went over first, was these ideas of a user flow. And what user flows do is they help to build conceptual models of an application for you, so you can kind of really understand how you're going to build the skeleton and then put the meat on it. It'll help shine light on dead ends, so where you might be going through, developing your application and building out the different pieces for it, but one section might be kind of really segregated from another, and this helps show that. And it also really allows more insight into how model data will be used. So what you're actually doing with your models and how you can kind of make them actionable. So here you can see, and all the examples I'm going to be showing are from a client of mine. Her name is Jenny, and she's got this site called themeetingboard.com. She's a super awesome client. I love working with her. We're having trouble getting user acceptance. So it's never a clean process. You always have to iterate on what your users may or may not need or want. So, but anyways, here we've got the sitemap. You come in, you can go through all these different verticals, and you can just kind of piece this together. A lot of times what you can do, just get a piece of paper, draw it out. Some people use index cards, and then I know it's kind of like getting away from code, and you probably don't like hearing that, but I think that is a really good idea to get away from your computer and kind of conceptually build these ideas, even if it's just yourself. It doesn't have to be in a team. So on to wireframes. Wireframes are visual representations of your requirements document. So it's like you're taking that list, or what would have been that list of requirements, of functional requirements, and you're visually representing them. So how they should appear after you go through and you create your application. And this will also help you with tests later on, and knowing what to test for, knowing how the application should perform to the user and how it should look. And that goes with the other line item, understanding how the user will encounter the application. So going through it that way. And this is another, this is kind of like an example for the meeting board of different, of a wireframe, sort of the different components that go into it. Just looking at this right now, you know that, well, you need to have a flash, you need to have the hi Hillary, there's going to be some sorts of invites, attendees, messages. We're going to end up having to create tests for friends activities, open events, as you created. It's very high level. I mean, and this is something that's much more visual than if you were going to be looking at this requirements list, and it's sort of like, oh shit, I got to look through all of this, and then it sort of just lays there. No one ever looks at it. And then once you get to, especially if you have to ship off, and then you go back, and then the client can always be like, oh well, we missed all of these requirements. You guys still have to continue the scope of the project. So this helps a lot with cutting down on that. And so that last piece was done in OmniGraffle, but you could easily do this on a piece of paper. You get a notebook in front of you, and then you just draw it out. I actually think that this example of a wireframe, and I think this is Vimeo's wireframes, but that example is pretty good. I mean, it tells you exactly what components you need to build. And it's not like you have to be an artist for this type of thing. I mean, you're just really getting your ideas on a piece of paper. So on to user stories. So user stories are essentially Cucumber features. They translate business logic, so you can make this handshake between a user and a system. You don't have to use Cucumber, especially if you're using some other sort of test library. You can, but I would recommend writing it out like Cucumber does, and taking that and putting it, and then thinking about it in whatever PSL you're using. So with this, you're creating instructions that a user should follow to obtain a goal, and creates expectations that a system should receive from a user. So basically, you're turning the user into a machine. You're thinking the user as a system, because like we as humans, we are a system. When you think about, we perform based on input versus output. So you see something, and then you react based on it, and what your reaction might be is like, through your hands. You're going up an elevator, see a button, you need to push the button. So it's, users are, they're depending on output, and you can break it down like that. So you guys have probably seen something like this, where given that John has 30 pies, when he eats 3 of them a day, he eats them for 10 days, then he should not be hungry. Well, all this is doing is just iterating through a loop. Yeah, pretty nasty. I didn't know how you guys were going to react to this. Especially in that case, like this mountain. So, and this is kind of like what it ends up looking like. You have these, and I know that the argument could be made that, well, we're still looking at pieces of text, we're still looking at blocks of text here, but what you're doing is breaking it up so that it's a little bit more manageable, and you're kind of really building out these features and really understanding the functionality that's going into the application. So that was the planning phase. Moving on, we're going to talk about execution. So, sort of how you can take this plan and really have it come to fruition. And really 2 parts that I'll talk about. So the first one is this idea of UI breakpoints. And I know that it's always a big concern with the time of your test suites. I do not propose that this should be run all the time. I think that you should do it at least once a day, though, where you have some sort of task that you run that automatically uses browser automation to open up into whatever browser you want to use. It doesn't have to be both Chrome and Firefox, but one of them. So I'm just talking about water here. I got this right off their examples. And basically, all you have to do is just put in the require, and then assign the browser, and then just the before statement. You don't even need the after really. So, I mean, that's kind of all that you really need to do to force yourself to look at this, because your test might be solid and behave like a user would, but a user also really depends on layout and placement. So what happens if some things get shifted around? I know Mike was talking about like a blue button, like if your users encounter that, I mean, like you have to think about yourself how you would encounter it. So you have to make decisions in the end. So there's this other idea of onion skinning. And what this is overlaying a screenshot of an application with like a prior screenshot, and this or like a PSD export, and this helps you see inconsistencies in the UI design. So if you guys have ever seen GitHub diffs, I mean this is really pretty awesome. You commit an image, you change the image, you commit it, and you can do a whole bunch of different things. One of which is go from one image to the next, working with this idea of onion skinning and transparencies, which is, I mean, it's really awesome, but it doesn't work for our use case. We would have to commit to test, and no one wants to do that, and you shouldn't do that. So what we can also do, and designers tend to do this, I don't really think that it's something that that for developers it's in, you know, it makes a lot of sense because it takes up a lot of time to set up these screenshots to sort of do this onion skinning, but it's the only fail-proof way to check for you're actually doing commit. And so this is like kind of showing you in action some things that you can expect from doing an onion skin. So you can see that, you know, in the newer version, you have the link color changed and it increased, and that also broke this flash right there, and the mask had changed. By the way, my client's pretty awesome. That picture is hilarious, and I don't know how many people would allow that up on their site. So that's pretty cool, and you know, you guys have probably seen most of that stuff before. Is there anything else to this idea of UXDD? And I think there is. I think what we can maybe do is create a visual test suite with, and this is a misspelling, but with water or selenium, and using chunky PNG, which I'll go into next, and or compatriot as a foundation. The compatriot's a gem that I'll also talk about. That's just starting off now. It's like a foundation to build on and to kind of you know, flesh out this idea of a visual test suite. So what chunky PNG is, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. This guy Jeff, he's I think he's Belgian or Danish, but he has a blog post on how to create your own GitHub diffs, and it's pretty cool. You can see, so it just compares the first photo with the second photo, and then just matches the area around it, and then creates a, it turns all of those pixels to green through this duration, or yeah. So, and I was reading through the comments, and I was like, wow, this is a really cool idea. I bet you we could do something like this, where you know, where we can take this idea of screenshots and kind of build UI design regression or acceptance testing with it. So compatriot pretty much does that right now. Carol Nichols and some people from the Pittsburgh Ruby community are working on it. But what it does is it tests the cross-browser. But I'm thinking, why not make it into UI design, regression, and acceptance testing? So what we could maybe do is like, so right now it creates a directory for it in /temp, and what we could maybe do is export PNG or PNGs from PDFs to docs folder, and then have to compare on that, you know, from what's actually being shown on the application to what you have saved there, or doing something where you have like a design sign-off where you go and and run it, and once like a QA, design QA has been conducted on a view, then you just say, okay, this is how I want it. Let's make sure that we set up a regression test for it, and then you just subcopy that.